Mr. Moderator, our distinguished guests, brothers and sisters, our friends and our enemies.
To Islam Rasulullah wa ba'd, in the name of Allah. May the peace and blessings of Allah be upon his last and final messenger. Family, friends, foes, haters, and hateettes, welcome back to the Feachaz. I greet you all in peace and love with no hatred in my heart. Salaam Alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So before we begin, please like, please subscribe, and please share. As you know, we got a lot of haters up in here. And family, this issue of democracy, we've talked about it a lot on this channel. And we have mentioned several or many times that democracy is the only thing that is exported from the West into your alleged third world countries. Democracy and the armaments to uphold the systems of democracy. And we're living in a time right now where not only is democracy unraveling, but it's democracy itself is unraveling at an accelerated pace. And it's not just in Africa. As we talked about yesterday, that these coups that are happening in Africa are a reaction to the French post-colonial powers falling apart and losing their grip on power. Now, we know that democracy is used as and weaponized against Africans, but not just Africans, wherever you find darker skinned people on Earth, including the Caribbean, including South America. Wherever darker skinned people live, democracy is the tool that is used to keep them subjected. If you look at even Australia, I believe Australia today, Australians are having a referendum on whether or not to include the indigenous people of Australia in the Constitution. This is your democracy. If you look at what's going on in South Africa, if you look what happened right here in the West with the rampant voter suppression against black folk. And now the proverbial chickens are coming home to roost internationally. And we are seeing it unravel on many, many fronts. Over here, we're seeing it unravel in the States with the trial of Donald Trump. We're seeing it unravel even here in Canada with the loud fervor to remove Justin Trudeau out of his duly elected position as Prime Minister of Canada. And we are seeing it in Africa, where democratic elected leaders are being deposed, but not just deposed, but deposed by the will and the behest of the people themselves. The people are supporting the depositions of their democratic leaders because the people recognize that their leaders are puppets. But what's happening here, particularly in the States and Canada, if you look what's going on, especially in the States, and mind you, whatever happens in the States directly affects what's going on in Canada. As you know, we have the largest shared border on Earth between Canada and the USA. Canada and the USA are the most what you would call it, largest trading partners. U.S. is the largest trading partner to Canada and vice versa. So there is a lot on the line in terms of democracy. Okay, so I'm going to read you this opinion piece, this op-ed from the Globe and Mail. And the Globe and Mail is one of the largest uh, papers here in Canada. It used to be centrist, but then it got bought and sold, and now it is right leaning, very right leaning now, right? But we're going to read what they have to say. These right leaning, this right leaning political piece here. So let me just pull this up. 1 second, y'all. Let me just pull this up. We're going to share. Okay, so democracy isn't dying. It was never really alive. This is from the Globe and Mail in Canada. And if you know anything about the Globe and Mail, it's even for them, it's very provocative, that title. But anyway, let's just see what they say. The profit prerogative and sustained centuries old campaigns to elevate vested interest in our politics has meant that democracy has never truly existed and has never really stood a chance. Now, if you are black, you already understood this here, but you knew this already. You didn't need an op-ed to tell you this. Just that one sentence. If you're black, you already knew. There's no democracy for black folk. For black folk, the only choice they have in a democratic society is who gets to be their slave master. Okay, so let's keep reading. As the 21st century has gathered pace, so has the rise of right wing populism. India and the United States, the United Kingdom, Hungary, Brazil, and elsewhere have experienced some of its worst effects under different names, but in the same spirit. Okay? And if you are been living underneath a rock somewhere, these countries, all of them, have or have had very far right leaning leaders, from Donald Trump to Narendra Modi and so on. Boris Johnson, you name it. Okay, so anyways, let's keep reading. Narendra Modi's Hindutva, okay, I mentioned them. Donald Trump's MAGA. See, I mentioned all of them. Boris Johnson's Brexit. Jair Bolsonaro's Brazil's Primeiro. Populist movements have succeeded in Poland, come close in France, and allowed Recep Tayyip Erdogan to remain in power. The rightward shift in Sweden last year and Greece this year, though not as extreme, are in the same penumbra of the phenomenon. Okay. Now, in politics, right, in the right-left paradigm, we mentioned before that once either one starts going to extremes, you're going to have a different set of rules. So anybody who goes extremely left, eventually they will end up in communism, right? And anybody who goes extremely right, eventually they'll end up in fascism. Okay, so what's the difference between the two? Communism is essentially sharing the wealth amongst the people from the state. So all the state, the state basically decides your salaries, how much you're going to get. You know, that's essentially communism, right? And fascism is essentially the melding or the melding or the amalgamation of the state with corporate powers or corporate oligarchs. That's fascism. Okay. Is not Donald Trump right a corporate or oligarch? Is he not? And right leaning political, uh, you could say, rhetoric is mostly and largely populist without any reason whatsoever. Okay, there's no reason. There is no um, what you call it. There is no type of civil discourse when you go extremely right. It is similar on the left when you go extremely left as well. It's very similar on the left. However, left leaning politics mostly tries to get all the people together underneath an ideology, some sort of ideological agenda. So, and that's it is mostly, you know, live and let live, and very liberal ideas, right? You know, everybody come together and protect our democracy and blah blah blah. Okay. So now what's happening is that the people, particularly in the West, have decided with their own statements and their own actions that voting is no longer necessary, and that the leaders should be force put in power. That's what's going on. And this is able to continue because the money behind the propaganda have very potent vehicles in social media. Very potent. So they can rally the people behind the most nonsensical cries through social media. Case in point, Andrew Tate. Okay. Why is Andrew Tate popular? Is he more articulate than most people? No. Is he more uh, intelligent than most people? No. He's not more intelligent. He's not more articulate. Has he said anything original or different? No, not really. But he is popular because he is able to navigate through social media. Your right wing political leaning outlets used memes. Memes. I want y'all to just to sit on that for a minute. Okay? They used memes and alternative media to will Donald Trump into the presidency. That has never happened before. They used memes. They used, basically alternative media outlets like InfoWars with Alex Jones, which was a major part of garnering support for Donald Trump. Major, major, major part. Likewise, Andrew Tate, he uses his war room. For those of you who are not familiar, he uses his war room, which is his, you can say, what he calls his secret society, to employ the services of those who join his war room to push all of his uh, social media. And he really got popular when he started talking about Muslims and stuff. That's because the Muslims, how Muslims are. They love themselves some zaddy, especially immigrants. Especially immigrants. I'm going to say it again. Especially immigrants. I'm going to say it one more again. especially immigrants. Okay, immigrants can't get themselves enough of some zaddy. They can't. The whole point of them being immigrants is to be close to zaddy. That's why they're here to begin with. So the social media information wars, okay, it's what's fueling this polarization. And now people are calling for the overturning of elected officials publicly and openly en masse in the West. Now, if you openly call for the overturning of elected officials, do you want democracy? Yes or no? Somebody put it in the chat, please. If you openly call for elected officials to be put out of office, and you openly say that the same election process that the elected official that you're trying to remove is corrupt, do you want democracy? Yes or no? Yes or no? And you have millions of people calling the democratic process, which black folk already knew was corrupt anyway. You didn't have to convince us. You did not have to convince us. But you had to convince the benefactors of the democratic processes. If you have millions of people calling for the overturning of elections, do you now still want a democracy? Dr. Sebastian Longstaff says $1 billion slush fund spread out through thousands of celebrities and social media influencers to support Trump and shill for him. Not to mention the admitted interference of the US elections by the government of Russia. Admitted, openly admitted, and recorded and televised, okay? Not to mention that. No, you do not want democracy. You do not, if you're calling for the overturning of elections. So, what is going on in America specifically is that we see here that Donald Trump has been indicted on numerous charges, numerous indicted. He has had his mugshot taken, and he has been effectively, according to the rule of Zaddy's law, disqualified from running in the presidential elections. And yet, still, after all that, okay, after all that, he is still leading in the polls in the Republican race. And nobody is even close. Not a single candidate is even close. Not one. Nobody is touching him. So, what does that tell you about your democracy? If your candidate is effectively disqualified according to your very rules of democracy, and you insist on placing him in power. Do you want a democracy? Do you want a democracy? And the same thing is going on here in Canada. The very same thing with Justin Trudeau. There is a massive right-wing machine in Canada, and we're seeing this for the first time in Canadian history, this right-wing rhetoric. That is, and they openly called for the stepping down of Justin Trudeau, openly in a letter. So much so that there was an inquiry about it. So Zaddy's house of cards is falling down all over the world. Meanwhile, in Muslim land, okay, you have your slow immigrant Muslims, very slow, okay, just slow, right? Insisting on holding this house of cards up. If I had to make a prediction, and I said this before, I said Donald Trump will probably be the last president, or him or his son, of the United States, and I still believe that. If I had to make a prediction, it would definitely have to be someone from the Trump family, because what you have now is people who are not willing to have civil discourse anymore. What it is an entire cult, a whole cult. Okay? And these folks, they are, here's the thing about the modern right wingers. The modern right wingers are nothing like the old school right wingers. Like not night and day. Night and day. Same thing. You could say the same thing actually for the left wingers as well. Right? But more so the modern right wingers, because they went far right, far quicker, and way further right than the far left has gone. Right? And of course there's the far left elements, of course, with all the, these ideological wars that they're insist on pushing on people, especially with the LGBTs and whatnot, which is causing people to hate left-wing politics even more. However, on the right wing, the right wingers, if you think about your modern right wingers, the more popular ones, all of them, right? They are really liberals masquerading as conservatives. Like every last one of them. I'm talking about the popular ones now. Like the popular right-wing politicians. At the core, or through their actions rather, their personal actions, they are liberal. But not just liberal, very liberal. Okay? Very, very liberal. With their actions, okay? But with their speech, with their talk, with their rhetoric, they're very, 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 very conservative. Very conservative. Okay? What do you mean? What do you mean, Bilal? Just pick any of them. Like, let's look at Jesse Lee Peterson, for example. Jesse Lee Peterson, who Eddie from the Dean Show invited to his channel, and we're not going to let him forget. Okay, Jesse Lee Peterson the living Uncle Ruckus himself, who's always talking about, you know, conservative values and homosexuality and all this kind of stuff, right? He's always talking about that. Did he not get caught or allegedly caught or accused of? Did he not get accused of assaulting in a sexual manner men? Did he not get accused of this? And not just one. You're talking about multiple white men, okay? Donald Trump. Donald Trump, who went and pandered to the Christian base. To the Christian base, right? Did not the team show with the fruity intro music. Did not Donald Trump get allegedly, okay, accused of assaulting many women, like so many women, so many. What happened to the marriage values and what like and things of this nature? And did he not get caught on tape about grabbing by the you know what's recorded on tape? So in private, he is liberal. In private, and he is liberal. He only talked that conservative public talk to pander to the Christians. You get it? The white conservative Christians. That's why he talked that, family values, but he don't believe in no family values. Since he's been on his campaign trail, where has Melania been? Was he not, what is not one of the charges against Donald Trump using public funds to pay hush money to Stormy Daniels, the adult film star who he smashed while Melania was pregnant. Right? Right? Those are liberals. Liberals do that stuff, not conservatives. Okay? Look at your popular social media menaces. Look at Sneeko. Okay? Who been invited to all kind of crazy, it's amazing. It's just outstanding the amount of Muslim social media influencers who can't get enough of chasing of the clout behind Sneeko. And wallah lazim, okay? Sneeko out on the streets making dawah to non-Muslims, out on the streets in public, making dawah in the Muslim to the non-Muslims with Sheikh Uthman Farouk. Okay, and not even like a week or two later, having threesomes and stuff. And a few weeks later, few moments later, in a hot tub with Fuzi tube with some hose and stuff. Like this is what he's doing, right? But he's talking that. What is he talking about? Family values, get married, blah blah. He's talking that talk. He's talking that talk like day and night. Talking that conservative talk. Andrew Tate, same thing. Andrew Tate, who built his millions off of the exploitation of women and sex, is now teaching men that he became Muslim because of his, because of the value system. You get me? So the point is that the modern right winger, really, they are liberals at heart. Really, they are. And you just can name any one of them. Like, literally, just name one. They're all liberals, really, but they have to speak and talk the talk of the conservative because that's where the money is. We mentioned to you before that the liberal conservative issue didn't start off as a liberal conservative issue. It started off as a North versus South issue. And it morphed into the liberal conservative issue because of the civil rights movement. That's when it became a liberal conservative thing. The liberal meaning that we have to include all people, and the conservative meaning we have to stick to the old conservative values, the Confederate values, those Southern values. You get it? So you find the old conservatives like Ronald Reagan, he was like really conservative. He was like really conservative. He never found him in no scandals. George Bush, as dumb as he was, and he was pretty dumb. He never get caught in no scandals. Never. We never seen this. Look at Colin Powell. Epic conservative. Epic conservative. Black conservative. A conservative that even most black people respect. He would never have caught in no scandals. Never. These are the old conservatives. These new conservatives, they are not even conservative. They are not. What they are is a cult. What they are is a cult. And the same can be said about the modern liberal as well. The modern liberal, they're not conservative. They're definitely liberal, right? Definitely liberal. But their nature is to be fascist. Okay? Their nature is to be fascist. They naturally want to superimpose their lack of values on entire societies as a modern forward way of thinking. That's the modern liberal. Okay? That's the modern liberal. The classical liberal was really about inclusion, right? That was the classical liberal. The modern liberal is not like that. The modern liberal is more ideological than anything else. They're not conservative though. Okay, they're not conservative. But they are fascist in nature. Okay, but I digress. The point is that the drums to end democracy are very, very, very loud all over the world, especially in the West. And democracy is the only thing the West has ever exported, along with their weapons, to subvert and to oppress the darker skinned people of the earth. So now, when you don't have your democracy anymore, then what is left after that? And what we have found is that way too many of your YouTubian elites caped very, very, very hard for democracy and democratic systems. They caped hard. They didn't, make the argument for justice, for truthfulness, these type of things. They didn't make the argument for these type of things, particularly the argument for putting God first, God above everything. They didn't make that argument. What you have now is an entire corner on social media where your YouTubian da'i elites lurk and try to pigeonhole Islam into right-wing ideology, like Abdullah Andalusi, like Hamza Zortis, like Muhammad Hijab, like Daniel Hakikuchu. These folks, because they want, and mind you, Hamza Zortis, he's a European. He's a European. Abdullah Andalusi, he's part European. And he identifies as white. Abdullah Andalusi, he identifies as white. He's part European. Okay? Daniel Hakikuchu, he's Iranian and a white supremacist. But they are going where the money is. So they will openly say the most ridiculous things in order to get that money. And the hell with the consequences. The hell with the impressionable minds that watch your channel, watch your content, and let me sell you this course so you can refute Marxism now. That's a new hustle now. What's Marxism? CRT and anything pro-black. That's Marxism now. But let's say, for example, for argument's sake, people, let's say that CRT is in fact Marxism. And we agree that critical race theory is in fact Marxism. Let's say it now. CRT is in fact Marxism. Then so what? So who cares? Who cares if CRT is Marxism? Look at where these guys go to school, okay? University educated in Western universities, okay? Learning philosophy, mind you, under Western philosophers. And who knows what kind of schools that they learning in their Western philosophy classes. They have to learn about democracy. They have to learn about communism. They have to learn about all these types of European political systems, all of them. But the one that they have a problem with is Marxism. That's the one that you have to be careful of. Word? Word. Was it Marxism that colonized French Africa? Yes or no? Was it Marxism that colonized Algeria or Egypt or Morocco? Yes or no? Was it Marxism that colonized Pakistan or Somalia? Yes or no? Was it Marxism that colonized Haiti? Was it Marxism that colonized Brazil? Was it Marxism that right now is bringing you apartheid in Palestine? Yes or no? But the idea here is not an imaginary fight against Marxism. The idea is to stigmatize Black history and make people adverse to it by labeling it with Marxism. You get it? That's the play. Because in Islam, whenever you want to find out about the thing, you go to the source. Allah says in the Quran, "Fas'alu ahlu dhikri in kuntum la ta'lamun." If you need to know something, if you know, ask those who have the knowledge if you don't know. Ask the people who know if you don't. Would you, whenever you see these Christian apologists, okay, and these students of the Christian apologists, and they come online and they try to start arguments with Muslims, where do they get their information? Do they get the information from the Muslims or they get the information from the Christians about Islam? Put it in the chat, please. The Christian apologist, the pseudo, these people, these trolls and whatnot, who like to argue against Muslims and bring up all this nonsense in a never-ending pool of pus. When they bring their arguments against Muslims, do they get their arguments, the things that they want to bring? Do they study it from the Muslims directly, or do they study it from other Christians like Orientalists and other Christian apologists and these things of that nature? Where do they study these things from? From the Christians or from the Muslims? Somebody put in the chat, please. Somebody put in the chat. The people who hate Islam, are they learning Islam from the Muslims? Are they sitting down and, listening to the lectures of Sheikh Albani and Sheikh Bin Baz and Sheikh Uthaymeen? They say, you know what? I hate this stuff. Okay? Is that what they're doing? Is that what they're doing? Or are they going to people like David Wood and Christian Prince and, your classical Christian Orientalist? Where are they getting it from? Christians or Muslims? Somebody put in the chat, please. Somebody put in the chat. Where do they learn it from? So when you tell these folks, listen, if you want to learn about Islam, at least be courteous enough to come to the source directly and then learn about Islam instead of the people who hate Islam. Why would you go to somebody who hates the thing that you're trying to learn? Like, make it make sense. Even on a regular common sense level, that don't make any sense. You're going to go to the people who hate the thing that you're trying to study about in order to learn about that thing. Do you do that in anything in life? When you learn math, do you go to somebody who hates math to teach you math? You know what I mean? Like, you don't do this on regular things. But when it comes to CRT, you're going to go to the very racists who are trying to censor CRT. And they are the ones who are saying that it is Marxist. And they are the ones who are making these imaginary connections with CRT and Marxism. And they can't quote not a single book written about the laws against black folk, not one, and make the connection between that and Marxism. They can't do it. It's impossible for them to do it, right? But at the same time, they have the audacity to try to learn, or to teach rather, people who don't know anything about CRT, that is from Marxism. Like, we need to learn about Marxism first before we need to learn about CRT. You get it? So the standard that they hold, the very same people that they debate, and Abdullah Andalusi, they hold the people that they debate to a certain standard. They don't carry that standard at all. Hamza Sortis, the same people he's debating, he doesn't have the same standard when it comes to black folk. At all. At all. You get it? This is the new McCarthyism taking place against black folk. The same way, I mean, it's literally carbon copy of McCarthyism. For those of y'all who read the history of McCarthyism, it's the same, exactly the same. When the government wanted to censor people in the 50s and 60s, all they had to do was label them as communist. That was it. Hold inquiries and all kind of stuff. You get it? It's the same thing. It's no difference at all. No difference at all. So they try to censor them through labels. And they're not concerned with the facts on the ground or of the matter. And when you test them on basic things, they can't answer. They can't answer. They have no answers for basic things. All they have with them is rhetoric and long-winded explanations for an imaginary problem. Even if it was Marxism, then who cares? Who cares? The majority of your existence is based upon some sort of Western imposed political ideology. Am I supposed to become a scholar in Marxism and communism and democracy and all this kind of socialism and Leninism and fascism, and am I supposed to become a scholar in all of that before I can say, you know what, maybe these laws are racist? Maybe. Maybe redlining is not such a good idea. Maybe gentrification shouldn't happen. Do I have to study Marxism before I can say something like that? But these are your people who are trying to label you as Marxist at the same time. Watch how they speak about our democracy. These folks. Watch how they speak about our democracy. Our democracy. Like Malcolm X said, I even heard one of them say our astronauts. Y'all are tripping. Y'all are tripping. So the very thing that they're standing up for, they used to defend liberalism for 30 years. Now they're coming out defending conservatism. The very thing that they coming out, putting their bodies and their reputations and all that on the line for is falling apart right before their eyes. And between the whole lot of these YouTubian elites, not a single thread or a strand of integrity. Nada. Nothing. Nada. Nada. They are about the bag. They are about whatchamacallit. Making sure they get eyes on their channels. That's what they're about. They ain't about nothing else. They ain't about nothing else. But I digress. when coups start happening all over the world, and then this house of cards starts tumbling down, and I don't think we have very much longer in the West, anyways, for democracy to completely fail, right? I would be surprised. I'd be shocked if it lasts a couple more terms, you know, in the West, in a Western setting, anyways. I don't see it happening much longer. You get me? Before something has to give, you're going to have a completely new system. The owners and controllers of financial capital, they are definitely not betting on democracy anymore. It's very clear. It's very, very clear. They have put their bets on polarizing the people instead of trying to uphold the system. Is falling apart. And it's very easy to polarize people now in 2023 because all you have to do is just put something on social media, or you'll reach millions, literally millions of people within seconds. And now with these echo chambers, these social media echo chambers like Rumble and True Social and whatnot, it's just going to get a hell of a lot worse. And people will try to, just like in January 6th, just like on January 6th, they will try to forcibly remove the elected power and put their own power in place. Just watch that Donald Trump trial. You ain't seen nothing yet. You ain't seen nothing yet. The fact that he is leading still after all that, and if you had an election with Joe Biden versus Donald Trump today, I promise you, Donald Trump would win. Of course he would win. Of course he would win. That's how polarized the people are today. You know, it's turning into a circus, and the third world is no longer taking the West seriously anymore. They're looking to the BRICS nations as a viable alternative to being enslaved by the IMF, by US aid, by the World Bank. They're looking to the BRICS nations to the alternative to that. And we talked about how Vladimir Putin forgave billions to African nations. They're not looking to America or Europe anymore, right? But anyways, thanks for joining me, family. I will see you guys tomorrow, inshallah. Wassalamu alaikum.